Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast with Lloyd Chapman and Bruce DeTorres. Lloyd, how are you today?
I'm good.
I'm glad, and I'm excited to talk about Censored on X, the YouTube channel that we've created. Talk about, if you would, the impetus for that, the need for that, what we're hoping to accomplish with that, please.
All right. I've had an X account or Twitter account since 2008. The people in my office kind of managed it, and I really didn't look at it that much, right? And when I met Bobby Kennedy and started kind of working on his campaign, I started getting more involved in it. I was doing great, and I was getting up to 3 million views a week. I think my highest views was 1.8 million on one thing. And then I started talking about the trillions of dollars that are missing at the Pentagon. And today, I would say my visibility has dropped 99.9%. 99.9%. So I'm getting about 1% of the views and the traffic that I got, at my peak. And so I noticed that if I put a post out about, there's an article that's out there, I think it's on Yahoo, about the Pentagon making $35 trillion in accounting adjustments in 2019, and that was larger than the gross domestic product for the entire country, and I think 50 times larger than their budget, right? And then, of course, there's a lot of articles about the Pentagon, never passing an audit like that. And lots of articles about money missing at the Pentagon. So when I started to talk about that, my visibility would drop on those posts. So I kind of figured, looks like the Pentagon has some control over X. And then one night I put out a post about the fact that the oil and gas industry is making record profits and paying little to no income tax. And that post, that really got a drop. And so from that, I kind of figured that there must be uh, some type of AI censorship programs that private industry has, right? So I
Mhm.
started doing research and using Perplexity. I found that there are multiple Defense Department funded and created AI censorship programs on social media platforms like Twitter, and that there are also private AI censorship programs on Twitter. And if you go on X and look at it, I did a Perplexity search on it, and only three people ever mentioned that on X. Rand Paul, um, what's his name? Mike
Mike.
Benz, and me. And I would say no one has put up more posts about censorship on X than me. I put out, daily. And so my X account has just been, I would say it was completely shut down. And today, a pattern that's fascinating is I've got 18,000 followers, and I know who they are. Back during Bobby's campaign, I was so close with these people, we traded phone numbers and emails, and we would communicate daily, right? And there was maybe 100 people I dealt with almost every day. I haven't seen those people in months. So what it looks like, if you go look at my X account, none of my 18,000 followers can see my post. But the funny thing is, the only people that are seeing my post are people that are criticizing me. They don't follow me. So I'm getting hundreds of people that don't follow me
Yeah.
responding to my post, attacking me, right?
Right.
And uh, and I have to say most of them are bot accounts because when you go to the account, there's no original post. Sometimes there's like, zero following, zero followers, right? And but anyway, so my research and my experience is that it appears, not appears, Perplexity says that the Defense Department has multiple AI censorship programs active on all social media platforms like X. And the other thing that surprised me is that it's been widely reported that Musk has complied with more government censorship requests than Twitter. Remember
Wow.
the
Right.
Twitter files? It looked like the FBI was running Twitter, right?
Right.
The,
Right.
the attorney for Twitter was the former FBI attorney, right?
Right.
And I remember there were like 60 FBI agents that were, either working there or, that were working with Twitter full time, right?
Right.
And Now, crazy after Musk said he bought Twitter to give the American people free speech. The reality is, it appears to be the most censored social media platform in the country.
Yeah.
So, with the
Yeah.
combination of all the government AI censorship programs, the private AI censorship programs, and must comply with more censorship requests from the government than anyone else than even Twitter, it appears to be the most censored social media platform in the country, right? So,
Right. And that raises a huge concern about Musk for all of his public posturing as being one of these superhero good guys who, with Trump as part of Trump's administration, is performing as if we are pristine good guys and we are doing nothing but good things for things like free speech. Lloyd, it really justifies all the posts that you're doing about Trump. No one is more critical of him than you. Nobody cites more reasons and facts and figures about not only the threat to free speech, but particularly small business. I know we wanted to talk about censored on X
yeah,
primarily, but I wanted to
yeah,
set the table A to Z.
that's fine. I tell you something. I worked on the Trump campaign. So if you go back and look at my ex post after Bobby endorsed him, I'm pro-Trump, right?
Right.
I remember being on the beach in British Columbia, and I think it was one of my most popular videos. I think that's the one that got 1.8 million. But I said Trump is going to have this amazing administration with Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and Elon Musk and all those guys, right? So I was super pro-Trump. So you go back and look at it, I was super pro-Trump. But I didn't really have a lot of opinions, quite frankly. I have facts, so I just look at the facts, right? But if you post the facts on X, you're going to get censored. And
Yeah.
my account is a good example. So I
Yeah.
started the YouTube channel Censored on X to
Yeah.
sort of be heard. Since I'm not being
Yeah.
heard on X,
Right.
uh, uh, I also started buying an account on Threads.
Hmm.
Right? So I got an account on Threads. I had an account during the campaign. I had an account on a True Social. So I've got an account on True Social, Threads, and X, right?
Right.
And I just wanted sounds kind of funny, but I don't like being censored. It actually is, I don't know, I don't like it. It actually
No.
feels like being in like solitary confinement in prison or like claustrophobic. It feels claustrophobic to put out, to have 18,000 followers and put out an accurate post with links to facts and data and then get censored, by X. By the
It's
way,
can
when
I
you're
comment real? I just want to comment real quick about not only frustrating and claustrophobic to a fellow like you, to a classic American, which to me is someone who says, "Give me liberty or give me death," a la Patrick Henry in 1775. But to do it to you, a Texan American, is even more dangerous.
right, well, I'll tell you something. I'm named after my mother's brother who was killed in World War II. His name was Lloyd Allen Granger, and I'm named after him. And I have all of his stuff. I had the telegrams notifying my grandfather he was missing in action, and then one that he was found dead. I've got a little box he made in wood shop when he was a kid. I've got his wings. I've got his scores from gunnery school. And so I grew up being very patriotic, very proud, I was super patriotic, right? Super patriotic, right? And so it's crushing for me to see what I see in the government and how it's changed. I'm 75, right? I remember when I was a kid, my father gave me an I like Ike button. I was in elementary school. I don't know what year that was, but yeah, I went to school with a button that says I like Ike, right? That's how old I am, right? So yeah, it's very devastating to be a patriotic American like I am and see, I guess I'll call it the fraud and corruption and the violation of the Constitution, of First Amendment rights. It's very heartbreaking. Yeah, it's very distressing. For people that don't know this about me, I've won a record number of Freedom of Information Act cases against the government. I've won about 110. My attorney says they're called legal battles, but some of them I won in court, and some of them I didn't have to go to court. But I've had over 100 FOIA requests that I had to litigate, right? So my lawyer says once you get a lawyer involved, it's a legal battle, right? So I've lost track of how many FOIA requests I've done in my lifetime. I've been doing it, by the way, since, gosh, for over 35 years. But the thing I'm proud of, by the way, is my win ratio. So I started doing these FOIA requests, I want to say like around 88. And my win ratio, after the government refuses to give the information when I have to start, litigating it, is 98.5%. I'll say that. I think that's unequal. If someone has won more FOIA cases than I have and has a higher win ratio, I'd love to talk to them about it. If anybody
Right.
knows me, I'd love to talk to them, but I don't think there is anybody like that. But anyway, so here I am. I'm a small business advocate. I started the American Small Business League, right? I'm a small business advocate, and I that's what I do. I have that
Hmm.
narrow focus, right? I
Hmm.
don't talk about all these other issues, abortion and gun control, all this kind of crap. I'm
Right.
small business, right?
Right.
And so I've been called a modern day Cesar Chavez for small businesses. I've been called the voice of small business in America. Judge William Alsop described me as being in a David Goliath battle against big government, big business, right? So I'm a known, strong advocate for small businesses. I would have to say, objectively, I'm probably one of the strongest voices for small business in America, if not the strongest voice. If there's someone that's been on TV more than I have, objecting to the government giving federal small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms or efforts to close the SBA, I would love to see those.
Right.
But I don't think that's out there. I guess maybe several months ago, for about 2 weeks, I put a $1,000 reward for the first person to show anybody other than me on national television objecting to the government giving federal small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. Nobody could find it. I
Right.
offered, I think it was 1,000 or more for the first person that could show anybody on national television objecting to efforts to close the SBA, right? So I put that out for a couple of weeks and nobody could find it, right? So it kind of looks
Right.
like I'm clearly conservative, one of the strongest voices for small businesses in America today, and
Yeah.
I'm being censored.
And I
I,
want to get right back. I want to get right back to being censored. I just want to add about the league, and I'm director of communications for the last many months, and it's an honor to be, invited by you to take this position. And folks can and should learn many of the amazing things on our site, ASBL.com, primarily of which is the fact that 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. And there you will learn, like you just described, Lloyd, about the contracts that should be going to small businesses, billions of dollars every year going to big businesses. We could refocus right now on censored. What's the next point you'd make about it? Or how there's an incredible harassment and intimidation you've experienced when you post something very important that exposes what the Pentagon's doing, missing money, being censored on X, the creepy, the weird, the disgusting posts, comments, etc., that boom suddenly show up, and what you've learned about wow, what that does to your
all right,
authenticity, your credibility, and your reach, right?
all right, all right. Help me stay on track here. Let's talk about the sex bots.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's talk about the economic stimulus program that I'm trying to push. And then let's talk about the government AI censorship programs. Great. Let's talk about
Okay.
sex bots. All right.
All right.
So I discovered one of the tactics that the government uses, not Twitter, uses to suppress you is to have sex bots like your post. And the X algorithm uh, suppresses your reach and silences you because it figures if some sex bot looks like a prostitute or a porn star likes your post, that you must be a bad person, right? So I was inundated with these horrific sex bots for months. And I finally figured something out, by the way. I use perplexity, by the way, all the time and ask these questions. And I figured out the way to deal with that was I report them as sexual services and then block them. And then I began to report them as spam, as fake accounts, because these sex bots would have not following anybody, no followers, and no posts. So I began to report those as spam. And it almost completely it dropped 95%.
And just to clarify, what you mean by a sex bot is a
It's a,
comment
it's
from
a,
a
it's a,
profile. Go ahead.
it's an account that
Yeah.
has a very graphic, erotic picture.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you look at it, it looks like an ad for a prostitute or something like that, or a
Right.
porn star. So,
Right.
so the
Right.
algorithm identifies these, what I call them sex bots, right? Based upon the erotic graphic nature of the profile picture.
Right.
Okay. But again, I've gotten rid of most of those by reporting them as either spam or sexual services and then blocking them, right? But
And
I,
and the way it hurts you and your reach is the algorithm sees, oh, Lloyd's profile or Lloyd's post, your content got a comment or a like by this disgusting
yeah,
sexual profile and punishes you and your reach.
yeah. So again, if you go to my X account, none of my I have 18,000 followers. None of them can see my posts because I'm not getting comments from any of them. The only comments I get are from people attacking me and disagreeing with me that don't follow me. So, right, so my followers aren't seeing my post, but only people that don't follow me are responding. And
Right.
that's not X doing that. That's the government. By the way, the government hires companies that do that. That's their thing. In fact, I tell you something. I found something on Perplexity yesterday that says that the government uses AI chatbots to to interact with people. By the way, the government's excuse for these AI censorship programs is to content moderation and to what's it called? Moderate misinformation.
Uh,
So the government considers me exposing the fact the Pentagon's never passed an audit. That's misinformation to the
right.
government.
Right.
I'm exposing the fact that the Pentagon made $35 trillion in accounting adjustments in 1 year. Oh, that's misinformation, right? But it's kind of funny when you look at their excuses. There's about 10 different descriptions. I want to say one of them was social engineering, content moderation, all these really flowery things like trying to promote, a cordial interaction, stuff like that. But yeah, by the way, here's a funny thing. So I got Perplexity maybe a year ago, and the government has changed the results on Perplexity. So I would say 6 months ago, if I went to Perplexity and said, "Is it true that there are multiple government AI censorship programs like Civil Sanctuary and WASDEX active on X?" It would go yes. The first word would be yes, and then explains it, right? I just did it this morning. It says there's no evidence that there's any government AI censorship programs, right? So
No.
they've actually changed it, right? And
No.
yeah, that's creepy, right? But I could tell that they changed it because the answers to the same question changed, right? But also the way it displays changed. So I used to say, is it true that Civil Sanctuary is a Pentagon-funded AI censorship program active on social media platforms like X? It would say yes. Well, now when I ask that question, it shows where they're searching. It'll come back and go, oh, there's no evidence of that. So the United States government has somehow modified the answers on Perplexity that are different than what they were even 90 days ago, to today. I started using Chat GPT a little bit, and that appeared to have more accurate, stuff on it. But it sounds crazy, by the way, but I believe that it's possible they changed the results on Perplexity to stop me, right? Because gosh, I put up so many posts on X.
Right.
I'll say, is it true that Elon Musk has complied with more government takedown requests than Twitter? And it would go, yes, right? So I was
Right.
posting that stuff, right? All right, so we talked about sex bots.
Yeah.
The If you go into these Perplexity or Chat GPT, the names of the most common ones that I see are Civil Sanctuary and WASDEX. And I saw a
Yeah.
new one this morning. I can't think of the name of it, but there's a ton of them, right? And they were funded by the Pentagon, by the Defense Department, DARPA, right? And the government would actually contract with colleges, universities, and companies to develop these AI censorship programs, right?
Yep.
And a few months ago, I asked Perplexity, were there private industry censorship programs on X? And it came back and said yes, right? In fact, it said there are both government and private industry AI censorship programs active on X, right? So
Mhm.
again, I figured that out when I made a comment about the oil and gas industry not paying income tax and my stuff. That actually was a major drop, by the way. That was a significant drop, and my engagement has never responded or recovered.
Right,
And I started posting about the fact that ExxonMobil, Chevron make record profits and pay no taxes, right?
right.
Uh, anyway, all right. So, see what
I
else?
would,
We
I,
talked about the
I
sex.
woed. Did we cover everything? Because I got questions.
Talked about the sex bots. We talked about
All right,
the names of the AI censorship programs. Like
right.
Civil Sanctuary and WiseDex. There's a bunch of them, right? Um, but it looks to me like the Pentagon controls X. In fact, I would say that the Pentagon controls X. So the Pentagon appears to control Musk, right? It's been widely reported, can't be disputed, that he's complied with more government takedown requests than Twitter. It's
And also he's indictable along these lines for all the boasting and bragging and display of studying every agency in quotes for fraud, waste, and abuse, not the Pentagon, which mainstream news has
right.
reported, as you've said, for decades, trillions in unaccounted, accounting adjustments. So any sane person would say, there's your black hole of waste, fraud, and
Right.
abuse, Mr. Musk. Why are you ignoring it? That's the elephant in the room, and it
Yeah.
really makes him and President Trump look bad.
That's what really got me centered. That's the topic that really got me shut down, right? That's why none of my followers can see my post, and I want to get these bots, right? By the way, uh, why don't you describe for them the sex bot post that I sent you? I made a screenshot of it. Why don't you describe it for people what you saw in this sex bot post that I got on X? How would you describe it?
It was graphic hardcore pornography in a video clip that just starts running. And for that to be a profile on X, you would a sane person, especially if you had children to protect, would lock up the owner of X, Mr. Musk or anybody else, and then try to figure out how is this even possible on a public platform? Okay, how is this even possible? Let alone run by one so close to the president of the United States. It's jaw dropping.
I want you and I to work together and go back and find that account and try to study it and see if it's still up there, right? But yeah, so what I got was that Bruce saw was a graphic, pornographic videos,
Boom.
like the most graphic, full on,
No, no, no more details.
yeah, yeah. And how is that possible? By the way, so here I'm Lloyd Chapman, America's top small business advocate. My account's being censored, but some account that had graphic pornography was allowed, on X. X
Well,
didn't have a
it's
problem with that,
well,
but
it's
they got a
served
problem with me
it's
being in the
it's
public with
served
that.
up to you at the least, I conclude or speculate, to punish you, to link you to that kind of content, and worse, to tempt you into clicking into that genre and world so that now that can all be used against you because
Yeah.
everything we do online is captured. Another theme in this whole conversation has been the degree to which profiles, not only on X, but on all social media, are auto generated or AI generated. They don't represent real people. That's the kind of
Okay.
quagmire and wilderness of mirrors that it all is.
You can tell a fake account, they're obvious, right? They'll have like low followers, low following. And I noticed a lot of them were created in 2024, by the way. I think it was December. I noticed a pattern that they were created in 2024.
Wow.
I noticed, by the way, that what I'll call the diction, the word choice, the personality, the attitude was identical. And they would have short, posts, like, shut the fuck up and stuff like that, but it had the exact same tone. So what I discovered from all my research on mania and perplexity is that most of the accounts on X are bots or fake accounts. I remember that it said the difference between bots and fake accounts. I don't remember what the difference was, but they're,
Hmm.
either the same. So most of the accounts, if you're on X and you've got, 1,000 followers, half of them are not real people,
And
right?
that's not Lloyd Chapman saying that. I last year I started seeing the first news reports from real researchers and analysts saying up to two-thirds of all content on the internet could be auto-generated or computer generated
Right.
or AI generated, including profiles.
Yep. I went into perplexity and I said, is it true that up to 75% of the activity on X can come from bots? It came back and said yes, right? So, quite frankly, to some degree, uh, X is kind of pointless. So if you're a Trump supporter and you want to deny reality and you go, oh, he's making America great again, blah, blah, yeah, X is your home. That's where you should be. But
Hmm.
if you want to tell the truth, they're going to suppress you. Quite frankly, X has degenerated into I would say, a Trump Republican propaganda platform. So
I'm gonna mention some contradictory evidence, which I can't make sense out of, because everything you've just reported, you and I work and talk daily. I have grown with you and marched shoulder to shoulder with you as you've explored this. You've had me look into things I've seen with my own eyes, everything you're describing, and yet on X there are truth tellers who are banished, demonized, have been censored, deplatformed, debanked as worse and worse than you, who were arguably even more well known. Naomi Wolf, best-selling author, as an example for 20 years, is now back on X and often hosts live spaces. So does the likes of Alex Jones, etc. So, Lloyd, yes, all what you've experienced absolutely has happened. And yet, inexplicably, dissident voices are also findable. So I guess if someone searches Lloyd Chapman, they'll find you. You're findable. But again, it's this swirl of what the heck,
yeah,
Elon? Why can't it be this pristine, pure free speech platform that you're saying it is?
I think we have, by the way, I'm being specifically targeted because of the fact that I've sued the Pentagon dozens and dozens of times, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, by the way, the last time I sued the Pentagon, they had to write me a check for $500,000.
Good.
And in that case, that's the one where Judge Alsop said, I'm in a David Goliath battle against big government, big business, right? So I'm being targeted specifically because of my 35-year track record of suing the Pentagon to simply expose the truth that they're
Yeah.
fabricating plans with federal small business, contractor programs, and the
Yeah.
Pentagon is viciously anti, small business. But see, I'm being targeted specifically, and again, that to me speaks to the my opinion and the documentation.
Yep.
Pentagon controls X.
I got a question for you, Lloyd. If we wanted this to be the perfect capture that it has been so far, that folks could share, go viral, we could end with saying, what do we want people to do? What are the steps people could do going forward and help us spread the word about this? If we wanted to kind of bring this home.
Well, people need to realize that there's no free speech on X. If you want to criticize the Trump administration or just tell the truth, you need to do it on Threads because I don't think you'll be allowed to do it on X. Again, my experience, my research, the facts indicate the Pentagon pretty much controls X. It's widely reported, you can find it, that Musk has complied with more government takedown requests than Twitter did. So, yeah, the government, the Pentagon, all the all my research shows that the Pentagon funded Civil Sanctuary
Mhm.
and WISE and all the other, AI citizenship programs, right? Under the
Yep.
guise of,
Yeah.
moderating
Yeah.
misinformation, right?
Right.
So,
Under the
yeah,
guise of congeniality.
yeah, X is not the platform if you want to tell the truth about what's happening in government, right? By the way, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. A funny thing, by the way, is that if you're communicating with a Trump supporter on X and you don't like what he's doing, you're a liberal lefty, Right? And I
Right.
told you the other day, I said, because I don't like Trump doesn't make me a liberal lefty. I worked on the Trump campaign, right?
Right.
So anyway, yeah, people just need to realize that there's no free speech on X. Um, I'm trying to, this is something that I want to add in, okay?
Oh yeah.
I worked with Bobby Kennedy to develop his economic stimulus program called Small Business Big Middle Class. You know all about that, right?
Mhm.
And so here's some facts. This is ironic that I'm being censored. I have a plan which I wrote for Bobby that would create the largest economic stimulus program in the history of America, would triple the number of jobs, create a huge economic boom, increase tax revenue, and I'm being suppressed. Isn't that crazy? The guy who, I should get a Nobel Prize in economics, right? So let's talk about that real quick.
Mhm.
So years ago, the Senate Small Business Committee came out with a report that said for every 1% contracts, federal contracts of small business go up, it creates 100,000 new jobs. Okay. That makes sense since 99.9% of all U.S. firms are small businesses. This is Census Bureau data. And Census Bureau data show us that 98% of all U.S. firms, that the small business create 90% of net new jobs, and 98% of all U.S. firms have 100 employees or less, right? Federal law says small business is supposed to get 23%.
Mhm.
All my research indicates, all the lawsuits I've won for 35 years indicate that a legitimate small business, based upon Census Bureau data again, would be 100 employees or less. Today, the government size standard is up to 2,000 employees, which is ridiculous, right? But if you consider a legitimate small business to be a company with 100 employees or less, all my research indicates, and all the federal investigation, that legitimate small businesses are getting 3%, not 23. So in Bobby's economic stimulus program, he agreed to give small businesses the full 23%, which would be 20% more. Based on the Senate study, that's 2 million new jobs. Okay. Now, America's only claiming to create about 2.1, 2.2 million. So an additional 2 million jobs is just about a 100% increase. Okay. They agreed to increase the goal for woman-owned small business from 5 to 25, another 20%. Right? So women are half the population. They own 42% of businesses. And every year of your life, companies owned by men have got 95% of all federal contracts. So Biden didn't think that was fair. So he was going to give women 25%, which is appropriate, give legitimate small businesses the full 23 required by the law. And that would be 40% more federal contracts to small businesses, which according to the Senate study would be 4 million new jobs, which would virtually triple the number of net new jobs in America today, triple. That would pretty much end unemployment, probably have a huge impact on homelessness in this country, would increase tax revenue, and would create a huge booming middle class economy, right? So that plan to triple the number of new jobs, create a huge economic boom, which would increase tax revenue, I'm being suppressed.
Yep.
The
And
Pentagon doesn't want people to know that Lloyd Chapman,
right.
has a plan to create the largest economic boom in history.
Yep.
Real quickly, the stock market, rises and falls based upon the jobs report.
Mhm.
Those fluctuations are like 5 and 10%. Imagine what would happen to the stock market if Bobby Kennedy's economic stimulus program were implemented and small business started getting, 40% more contracts, triple the number of new jobs, right? If it goes up and down on 5 and 10, think would go up if it went up 300%, right? I think that might create a huge economic boom across the country and possibly even around the world,
Yep.
since it's informed that world markets, not just America, world markets rise and fall on the U.S. jobs report.
Right.
Think what would happen anyway. So it's crazy that I've got this
Yep.
very simple, no new taxes, no new spending,
Yep.
absolutely free, deficit neutral plan to create the largest economic boom in history, and
Yep.
I'm being shut down by the government. That's
Right.
crazy, right?
And all that also imply what you've just described is if all those contracts were really going to small businesses, folks, that's billions of dollars of business being given to small businesses that have to create those jobs in order to fulfill those contracts. The big businesses who get those contracts, they're big businesses. They don't create one new job to perform those
Yeah,
contracts. And
yeah.
this is two-thirds of the way down our homepage, this economic stimulus plan. You can click a link and see exactly what Lloyd just described at ASBL.com.
Yeah.
And as concerned, if not agitated, as so many Americans are about politics, about what Trump's doing, about how the Democrats could do a better job, now is the time to print all this out, get up to speed about it, send it to everyone you know who's running for office, no matter what party that they're in, or for the first time in your life. Throw your hat in the ring and run for Congress or run for mayor or run for your town council or run for Senate. But this is supposed to be a participatory democratic republic. Nothing's going to change unless we do it ourselves. No hero is going to come and do anything for us. We have to get excited about this kind of information and this kind of possibilities for our children, our grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. All right, let me wrap up with this. So I started my YouTube channel, Censored on X, to be heard and get this information out. 99.9% of US firms are small businesses. They create 90% of net new jobs. According to Census Bureau, 98% of all companies in America have 100 employees or less. The only agency in government to assist the 34 million small businesses where most America work is the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration was created specifically to implement the Small Business Act, which is the largest economic stimulus program in history to create jobs and channel federal money into the middle class economy. It's the largest economic stimulus program in history, and no president in history has cut the SBA budget and staff more than Donald Trump. So, in a country where 99.9% of all the companies are small businesses, and they create 90% of all net new jobs. The only agency to help those companies and support them is the SBA, and no president in the history of America has gutted the SBA staff and budget more than Donald Trump. To me, that makes him anti-small business. And how stupid. How stupid. He says we're going to make America great again, but we're going to shut down the only agency to support the 34 million small businesses where most Americans work that create 90% of all net new jobs. How stupid. How stupid. By the way, his economic policies will never work because if 99.9% of all US firms are small businesses, what percent are large businesses?
Right.
1%. By the way, I saw that Trump had met with business leaders. Trump meets with business leaders. Nobody knows in America. He met with guys that represent 1/10 of 1% of US firms. And I think we mentioned this before, I'll mention again, that according to the Government Accountability Office, 34% of the largest, most profitable companies in America pay zero federal income tax. And I saw a report from the Kauffman Foundation like 15 years ago that said Fortune 500 firms haven't created one net new job in over 40 years. So today in America, this is why I'm being censored. They don't want people to hear that the federal government is giving about 95% of all federal contracts to the top 1/10 of 1% that don't create jobs and 34% pay no taxes. That's a formula for economic collapse, right? And I'm trying to educate people, and they don't want people to be educated about that. But think about that, people. Only 1/10 of 1% of business in America are not small businesses. And that's who runs Congress. That's who funds all the campaigns, that top 1/10 of 1%. So, all right, that's all I got. Go look at my X account, my Twitter account, and I'm on X, I'm on Threads, I'm on True Social, and help me spread the word. We need to get our country back on track. We need to get our country focused on the 99.9% of all firms that are small businesses. All right.
Amen. And it's a golden opportunity because the administration is portraying itself as muckraking and cleaning house, so we can hold them their feet to the fire with a video like this. I hope everyone spreads this video far and wide. Lloyd, an honor and a privilege. We'll be talking right after I kill the recording. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today.